All right. Thank you. I told you we'd be right back. And please don't be shy if you'd like to fill in seats. Like, we're kind of the coolest seats in the house. Just want to point that out there. All right. Our next conversation tackles a growing and urgent threat: deliberate attacks on the infrastructure that keeps us all connected. As these incidents increase, the stakes for public safety, emergency response, and business continuity have never been higher. In this panel, Under Attack: Protecting America's Communications Networks from Criminal Threats, we'll hear from industry leaders, policymakers, and law enforcement experts. Please welcome Bill Cochrane, Supervisory Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation; Jane Rhodes, SVP Corporate Physical Security for Charter; Mike Spaulding, VP Plant Maintenance for Comcast. Yes, well, help it up. Yes, audience participation, love it. And Alex Menard, VP and Lead Legislative Counsel for NCTA. And our moderator, Mike O'Reilly, President, MPORielly Consulting and former FCC Commissioner. Please give them all a big round of applause.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start. You got a very distinguished panel to talk about a very important topic. We're going to start with a little bit of video if they're ready for us.
Criminals are cutting communication lines, disrupting connections to schools, hospitals, businesses, and your home internet. In the second half of last year, nearly 6,000 of these incidents occurred, many impacting 911 access and posing a serious threat to public safety and national security. Tampering with critical infrastructure is a serious crime that will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. If you see something, please report it. Let's keep our communities connected and safe.
Alrighty, that helped frame the issue a little bit, but perhaps you can provide a little bit more color on that. Jane and Mike, maybe you can share what is the scope of the problem that we're facing, that your companies are facing on the basis of attacks to the critical infrastructure.
Sure, thank you. So I think the public service announcement that you just saw, together with NCTA and Cox and Comcast and our other partners, AT&T, we're rolling those out across the country to further educate our customers and the public about the impact of these cuts. As mentioned in that, sometimes it's just residential impact, right? But you can't say just residential. That's impacting people's ability to work remotely, for school work, for day-to-day operations of your home. But then also the impact on businesses as well, too. We see that the potential exists for 911 to go down, support to commerce, financial institutions, medical institutions, life and safety. So we started on this journey, so to speak, probably about 2 years ago, recognizing that California is our #1 spot for these incidents. And for a while, it was kind of a cost of doing business, but we've been able to identify just the number of the incidents increase, the impact is becoming more challenging, and not only that, it takes away from our company's ability to provide service back to our customers. It's frustrating across the board. So many different groups within Charter are involved, not only our field operations, security teams, communications, GA, customer operations, so it has quite a large impact.
Yeah, I think Jane hit the nail on the head. There's really a broad impact to our customer base, our business customers, federal government facilities that we're supplying service to, as well as many other critical parts of the economy and critical parts of our communities that are impacted by these fiber cuts and the destruction of these critical infrastructure. Just the scope of the problem and kind of put it in terms of the network itself. We have anywhere from 1,000 or 2 customers that can go down at a time, upwards of 100,000 customers that could potentially be impacted by a single incident. And so, when this type of destruction is happening on our critical infrastructure, it's absolutely an impact to the communities that we're serving, to the businesses and the government institutions that we provide service to as well. So, and it's, I think one other thing I would say, this isn't an infrequent occurrence. This is something that's literally happening daily across the nation, depending on where you're at. Texas, California, the Pacific Northwest are kind of hotbeds of this type of activity, and it ranges anywhere from, a really, I'll call it, unintended consequence of somebody that is trying to seek out, some copper, to really intentional bad actors that are out there trying to do harm to our networks.
So you talked about the impact on your consumers, your residential and business customers. What does it mean operationally for your companies? What are you forced to do? What's the impact and cost, and also deployment of getting things back up and operational?
Yeah, I'll start. And for us, these are not inexpensive repairs to make to the network. Millions of dollars are being spent each year to restore these networks to what they were prior to the damage that was caused by this kind of destruction of critical infrastructure, just to use the term. But it's not just the money. It's the view of the public around reliability. Reliability is such a key part of our industry and what we're able to provide to our customers. And there's not an option for redundancy in these last mile scenarios. When you're that close to the customer, there's no way to provide a redundancy at these parts of the network. And so we are the ones left kind of holding the reliability bag, if you will, with the consumer and our customers out there. And so there's lots of reputation damage that happens in the process, in addition to monetary damage.
Yeah, I think further, as far as the impact on the company, certainly our field operations, our technicians are out, oftentimes completing repairs, taking them away from their other efforts to expand and enhance our networks. The painstaking time it takes for the repairs, especially on the fiber, it may take the bad guys, who generally are operating in the overnight hours. We track all of the incidents, and anywhere from 12 to 5 a.m., we're probably seeing 60–80% of the incidents as well, too. So their 30-second climb up a pole or 3-minute effort can result in 6, 10, 12 hours of restoration, if not more as well, too. So the impact as well, too, as I mentioned briefly, is across many different business lines within our company. So I'm responsible for physical security for Charter. So this takes us away from our ability to protect and spend as much time as we would like to protect our employees and harden our facilities from workplace violence. We spend a lot of time with our law enforcement partners as well, too, to develop those relationships to make sure when an incident does happen, we've got those communication pieces in place. But our GA team has done an outstanding job in the outreach to legislators and to other lawmakers. And so, again, taking them away from their day-to-day jobs, but for us to be able to harden us as a target, to be a strong team, not only at Charter, but across all the other companies with NCTA and other communication groups.
Is it fair to say that companies, yourself, and your customers are forced to pay the cost to repair the network and bring it back to service? I want to bring Bill into the conversation here. What's the impact on some of these cuts on national security? Is there concern that some of these cuts could go into a deeper, darker direction?
Sure. So, there's the cuts that I think most people are thinking about, which is, somebody who's looking to steal some copper, or sometimes just careless driving with the back of their dump truck up. But in other circumstances, and you have to kind of pay attention to the effect of these cuts, they can appear to be deliberate efforts to take other pieces of the critical infrastructure offline, to eliminate communication abilities between law enforcement or factions of government. And in situations like those, that's pretty much why I'm here, is to say, please, this is where you need to reach out to the FBI, because there are organizations, there could be other countries, there people both criminally or politically motivated to attempt to damage our ability to communicate. And in those circumstances, that's where we really would like for you to take the time, gather the information on the scene. And I'm here talking to the experts who know what looks unnormal or unnatural, and then reach out to your local branch of the FBI and let us do what we do to try to figure out who it is that's behind it.
Alex, let me bring you in here a little bit. What is this? We're at talking about fiber, but it's not a copper-only story. Is that right? The association has held a number of summits and done a white paper. Can you shed some light on why we're forced to talk about it here?
So we heard about this at NCTA from our member companies, and we've done a significant amount of work with other segments of the industry. So you shouldn't view this as a cable issue. This is something that is impacting communications providers nationwide. And so we have done a lot of work with the telephone companies, with the wireless companies, US Telecom, CTIA, ACA Connects, NCTA, a lot of the alphabet soup that everybody knows in DC. But they have come together with us to talk about this issue, raise the visibility of this as a significant issue. There is an element where they are looking for copper from the telephone companies' wires, and we are just nearby, but making sure that everybody understands that this is something that is hitting all components, wired and wireless, across the country.
I just might add to that as well too. Electric companies, utility companies are being impacted by this as well too. Transportation, rail lines, electric vehicle charging stations. So where copper is present, there is a desire by the bad actors to seek that out, harvest it, and then take it back to metal recyclers for the cash payment. So we are enjoying enhanced relationships across the different industries as well too, to further drive awareness, working in coordination to define and refine the laws as they relate to metal recyclers. But it is not only communication, it's in many different areas.
So what's driving the copper side of the equation? Is it economics? Is it price? Is it what forces you to have to partner with other companies that have copper and know that your facility is being dragged down? Is there any way to educate anybody on that there is no value to copper within your network?
Yes, I'm not sure they're hearing our message, right? But we do a lot of outreach. We have a reward program, as do many other companies as well too, and we're looking to enhance that to a larger, broader industry reward program. But yes, we do our best to educate. We actually do outreach to different homeless encampments and walk them through that this is not, you will not get any copper from our fiber infrastructure. However, that is an ongoing.
Do they believe you? Do they?
Sometimes they do. We have some very, very cooperative ones, and again, the reward is helpful to us, but we have to constantly beat that drum. Copper is a part of it, right? But the price of copper had kind of reached a peak in about March of this year. It's come down a bit, but the ease at which bad actors can take it to a metal recycler, they have to burn it, they have to strip it, and they have to do some work. The ease of selling it is really an issue that we're fighting to deny them their ability to do that, strengthen the laws that are in place, require more identification and proof that the bad actors are authorized to hold that material. So that's a big part. We want to further deny their ability to make money from these efforts as well.
Would you agree, Mike?
Yeah, I would agree. A lot of this is, where if you set aside the intentional bad actors in the equation, those that are seeking out just a quick payment for copper, it's a simple and easy process for them to go to and go get paid some amount of cash from the local recycler, where there's virtually no traceability to who they are and how they got it or acquired what they brought to the recycler. So it makes it very difficult to provide a counter incentive for those folks who are doing that type of, I'll call it action, to stay away from it outside of outreach and things like that. But to the degree that is successful, right, there's only so much you can do and keep the honest person honest, and then the rest of the folks are going to do what they decide to do at the end of the day.
Alex, can you shed light on what's happening on the federal level to help provide some solutions?
Right, and if I could,
Yeah,
like
please
before
do.
that, on the state level, there is, one of the things that we kind of collectively tried to do last year is look across the country and find there's the variation in the state laws. Which state laws needed to perfect their definition so that it didn't just cover facilities that were behind a fence. It was the wires or the cabinets. Which state laws still talked about telegraph wires. They need to talk about broadband wires. And also which state laws, maybe it's still a misdemeanor, so get that up to a felony. Last legislative session, so states are only in session for 1, 3, 6 months of the year, most of them. There were 24 states that considered 36 bills on this topic. 13 states have signed into law an improvement on the definition of broadband or increase the penalties, which I think is kind of the first step to bring to a higher level all of the state laws. I think next year you'll see maybe some improvements on the metal recycler side of things and making sure that there are some licensing and other regulatory constraints around that. On the federal level, we have a bill that has been introduced in the House that has been introduced by Representatives Veazey and Lee. We are hoping to introduce a companion bill in the Senate. That would take existing federal law where it is already a crime to attack a communications network owned by the government and make it a crime to attack a communications network regardless of ownership. We think that that kind of elevates the severity of this issue with what is fundamentally an interstate service and makes that enough of a priority where, you know, the effects of this are really not kind of a smash and grab at your local 7-Eleven. This is something that's broader than that.
I think in our investigation, so from our team, we're notified essentially in real time when a cut occurs. And I see some of our field ops partners out there, and we spend way too much time with them on these topics. But we're notified immediately. Then we make contact with law enforcement, or text you on scene as well too, but we start that engagement immediately. And so we understand the majority of these incidents are bad actors working individually. We constantly are looking for that organized aspect of it. Are there groups that are targeting us? Do we understand what that funding mechanism, where those funds go? So we track, at Charter at least, the different types of cuts. When it's an aerial cut, it might be a pedestal, maybe an underground vault. We learn from each of those. Our field operations team can use that information to further harden the target, but it helps us when we're working with the FBI or state fusion centers or local law enforcement for us to be able to demonstrate patterns, levels of activity, and there may be a seasonality to it, what those peaks are, but we get as much data as we can to analyze the incidents and to look for connections across the bad actors.
Oh, as we do a lot of the same things at Comcast to try and create some sense of pattern or repetition to what's going on at the local level. But I wanted to go back to the work at the state levels for a second, because the uniformity that you can create across the states, it also allows for a better process for us to be able to approach local law enforcement rather than having to do it 100 different ways across 25 different states. You can start to take a more common approach to law enforcement in partnership with our security team, so that you don't have to tailor everything to a specific set of laws in a specific area. That's a really big step for us collectively to be able to do some of that stuff, and makes the issue of enforcement much more efficient, I believe, rather than, again, trying to take a very individualized law in an individualized locale and trying to figure out how to prosecute that at different levels of penalty within the legal system. So that's a critical step in what's being done on this effort, is to kind of create that level playing field across states. So big steps there on that legislative front.
Jane, I take it the new state laws in this area would be very helpful. You got local prosecutors who misdemeanors just doesn't rise to their interest, and really ratcheting up the penalties, plus dealing with some of the issues that Alex mentioned. Is that beneficial on your side?
Oh, for sure. We also face the reality that many law enforcement departments are understaffed, and there's a real focus on violent crime, and property crimes don't necessarily rise to that level. So we do a lot of outreach to prosecutors as well, too, in coordination with our industry partners and government affairs. But for prosecutors to understand the impact, we find that to be a really important connection to make as well, too. And in the event that a police department, a prosecutor's office, or some other kind of state or local government location is impacted, that can help bring them to the table. But we're doing more to educate our first responders and law enforcement, I should say, as well, too. We have a video that we'll be releasing soon for a roll call to make sure that officers that are out there, in especially California, Texas, Missouri, South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, those are our hot spots at the moment, but it may change. But to make sure that the officers understand when they roll up to an incident like this? What are we looking for? What type of evidence is important? And to further stress what the impact is.
So, Bill, you mentioned earlier on, like, if you see something, say something kind of scenario to these experts in the audience who know what they're talking about and what they see. But is there something special that we can know if it rises to a higher level of a threat to
Well, I mean, the
national
goal of a
security
bad
or-
actor would be to take some form of critical infrastructure offline. And so I think what you would see is a certain amount of intentionality within the cuts. Something that doesn't look like it's an opportunity. I know I've seen situations where a series of cuts has maintained keeping the system down. I've seen situations where the cuts were in a difficult location that indicated that there was some pre-knowledge of what they were going after. Things like that's gonna raise a suspicion level. And just as I mentioned, y'all are the experts. You can step back and look at something and just be like, this doesn't feel like just a run-of-the-mill cut. And then turn around and go, well, what did this affect? And was there, could there have been an organized motive behind making the cuts that were made?
Alex, you talked on how you're working with different industry partners to try and deal with this issue, both on the attacks, but also on the federal and state side of the equation. Can you talk a little bit more about the new partnership or the organization strike that you've all put together? You provide a little bit more color on that for us?
So I just came from a meeting earlier today. SCTE and NCTA have helped convene some senior executive leadership from many of the companies in our industry and are reaching out to providers across the industry. So we were joined by AT&T at this first meeting to kind of work from a different angle on this issue and make sure that it's getting the full attention it deserves. There is a data collection component of this, right? Finding out how big a problem this is. We've worked with our trade associations on getting data from member companies who are going through the experience and kind of rolling that up to some nationwide numbers. So we did a survey last year. The last 7 months of the year, there were 5,770 incidents across the country. That should be taken as at least number, because as we go through this exercise, we're refining our ability to kind of accurately characterize these cuts. We have done 2 summits where we started in Dallas, Texas, then did one hosted by Charter in St. Louis, Missouri. We're going to Los Angeles for a summit hosted by AT&T next week, where we will release a revision of this white paper with new numbers. That number will be much larger, I think, for the first 6 months of 2025. You will notice a pattern of those 3 states that hosted the summit. Texas, Missouri, and California are the 3 largest problem states for this type of activity right now. So we will continue to collect that data and advertise it in an attempt to show that this is, they're rightfully pursuing, law enforcement is rightfully pursuing violent crime, but this isn't just a property crime. Like, this is not someone stealing something off of a retailer's shelf. This is something that has a much broader impact. And so being able to say, this is how frequently it's happening, this is how many customers are impacted, this is how much it costs the companies to repair it, but also this is the economic impact on the country, right? Like, for every amount of time that these services are unavailable to businesses, schools, and residential consumers, right? Like, there is an economic impact. So we've actually commissioned an economist to do a study of that. We will release a paper next week that will kind of go through that analysis, and I think that will also be an eye-popping number, and hopefully folks will be able to focus. We've got better state laws, we've got easier to gather evidence and make sure that we're getting the arrests and prosecutions that we need.
You mentioned recyclers, and next year may be the time to turn back to that issue. Jane and Mike, how do you work with the recyclers? How does your team work with them to educate them and also, indicate, don't do this, don't help these criminals along the way? Is that an easy process, or is that frustrating?
So it depends, right? You know, we've had some very cooperative metal recyclers that have, we share our reward with them, and that can be a good incentive as well there. But the recycling business is, you know, not terribly regulated, or the regulations seem to be, what's the right word? Fuzzy.
Flexible?
Maybe fuzzy. And you're not necessarily dealing with a terribly sophisticated or a lot of policies and procedures that we're all accustomed to. So we go to scrap yards, and it is quite the sight to see. So our teams are out there. We use our reward, and we've even have engaged the recyclers to join us at some of our different industry meetings as well too. I'm not sure how much impact we're having there yet, but that's why we really want to firm up that when somebody comes into a recycler and they've got burnt copper, that it cannot be purchased. That's our goal. But we're trying to put all those different barriers and requirements in place to reduce that. But yes, we've visited some really lovely scrap yards along the way. So,
Mike, do you have the same experience when your team shows up? Can you point and say, "Oh, that's mine"? There's a huge pile of my equipment that just got ripped out.
Yeah, you know, our network maintenance technicians aren't the ones going to the recyclers. Our security teams are, as they do the investigation on this. But I think they run into the same problems that Jane's alluding to, which is, you know, there's no chain of custody, if you will, for these types of things that allow you to understand ownership at different points in the process. And so that flexible flexible regulation that you said really hampers the ability to understand, you know, or to really even have a meaningful conversation with some of these recyclers where you can engage them in a right and wrong discussion where they just are looking at you go, hey, I just got a piece of metal and I gave somebody $50 for it. Yeah, same challenges. I don't think we've gone to the reward yet, but I think it's something that our teams are partnering with Charter and others across the industry to look to be somewhat more common and standard on that so that we can, again, address the issue more broadly and more uniformly.
yeah. So along those lines, Crime Stoppers is a national organization. We're looking to, again, have an industry-wide reward through them. They currently have a similar process in place with Tesla, after Tesla was experiencing all the attacks and arson. So that organizational component is there that will allow us to target local areas as we move forward.
Is there anything to do to harden the network to make it harder for criminals to do the activities and the harm that they're causing, or is there anything that would make it easier to or reduce the restoration time? Is there things that on your side of the equation or on the policy side of the equation beyond the stuff that Alex has already spoke of and on criminal penalties in the states and otherwise? Is there things that physically can do to the network to make it easy, shorter penalties, shorter time frames?
You know, as it relates to restoration of the network itself, I mean, our teams and the panel before this was talking about network resiliency and after, you know, major storms and things. Our teams are well trained and well prepared to respond to these and are as good as anybody in restoring the network connectivity to our customers. So there's not a whole lot of new technology to be deployed or processed. We've experimented with things like cameras and kind of high theft areas and areas where we've seen a lot of this kind of activity. And some of that has been yielded a little bit of fruit. But you can't put, you know, you're talking about our networks combined, Charter and Comcast, are millions of miles of fiber across all 50 states. To be able to monitor that with some physical security is virtually impossible. And so you kind of go where the heat is, if you will, and try and provide another layer of visibility there, but it's not something that you can do uniformly across a network of this size.
Yeah. I think we do have some images as well. If Sam, you could put those up on the screen, just to further highlight what the impact looks like, right? And these are a variety of different impact site, you know, some at a pedestal, some aerial as well too. So, you know, same thing with Mike's point, to select the right area for the camera. We've been lucky a handful of times, certainly not enough there. But there are times when we've had locations that have been hit multiple times. We'll work with our field operations team, especially it may be a bridge near a large homeless encampment. Can we reconfigure what that looks like as well too. But I think from these images here, you'll see there's a variety of different ways that they may be targeting us and harvesting the oftentimes copper, sometimes fiber, and then these are many of the tools that they use as well too. They're all available at Home Depot. Many of them are stolen. They leave some behind. So it's not a terribly sophisticated effort as far as
Well,
the bad guys.
there is a little level of sophistication here, right? Like, I don't want to undermine you. Like,
No, at
one level, it is
Sure.
kind of a smash and grab type crime, but at another level, right, like you have to get some of these specialized tools and know enough to cut this part and maybe pull this wire, so that I think there is a level of sophistication that this isn't kind of people wandering down the street and being like, oh, I'll grab this piece of copper, right? Like, I think
There are some instances,
yes.
I would give you that for sure, right? But when you see some of the videos, but certainly we're concerned, right? Especially when we see in the underground vaults.
Yeah.
There may be a connectivity from a vault here, and then we have a cut at another vault 2 miles away within the next 20 minutes. Those are the ones we're really concerned about and understand them. But it is, when you see some of the videos, you would be really absolutely amazed. Sometimes in broad daylight, somebody standing on the top of a SUV cutting it down would amaze you. But it's dangerous work as well, too.
Yeah, I think where the sophistication that we've seen come in is more so on the bad actor side, when you have people that are intentionally cutting us to intentionally do harm. We've had situations where you've got multiple cuts in a single day that seem to be coordinated and seem to be exactly in the right places to take down a facility that would otherwise be redundant. And so, those are the ones where I agree with you. There are some of those that have a level of sophistication that is not just the smash and grab, homeless encampment or that type of work. So it goes the array from a homeless encampment, setting a vault on fire to melt down the jacket to get to the copper, to the guy who cuts the fiber on the day of the Super Bowl in Philadelphia when the Eagles are playing, that is trying to do intentional harm to our network for whatever reason they perceive being harmed by Comcast or Charter or somebody else.
And Bill, that's where you're getting brought into this, right? When you get to that level of problematic situation.
Yes,
that's when-
absolutely. And the figuring out the who and the why. Really, every branch of the FBI and everything that we work, it could be any one of them. But if we don't get the tip to start the investigation, then we can't get to the bottom of it. And so that's where we want to try to improve communication between all of you and us to try to figure out those sophisticated cuts, what's going on there.
Alex, you mentioned 3 states, that why you're doing summits in 3 particular states, but it's not just an urban problem. Or what does it mean for rural America, where networks are trying to be built out? I was on a panel yesterday talking about BEAD and trying to build networks to where people are, but in rural America, what does it mean for discontinuing a line in an area that may be miles away from somewhere else?
Yeah, I think when we look at the survey data, we see there might be concentrations in certain areas, but this is something that impacts all geographies of all providers across the country. When you're talking about rural America, when you serve those areas, right, it's that much harder to secure that many miles of plant. You've got, 7 miles, no homes down a road, and a wire hanging out there on its own, and that's ripe for attack. But you also have the cost of this, right? We are spending billions of dollars to make sure that we connect every location across the country, billions of federal government dollars investing in these networks. As they are attacked, that reduces the value of that, right? And it means that every dollar that a Comcast or Charter would have spent on upgrading or expanding their network, they're having to repurpose some of those dollars and restore service to rural America. And so I think if you look at it in terms of as the government invests in making sure that rural America is connected, this is one component of protecting against that.
What's your experience in terms of consumers, that your actual end users that contact you? Are they one of the first lines of defense? And hey, my service is out. There's a problem. Do you get many calls that way? You said your network is alerting, but are they like first line?
Yeah, so certainly our network team understands of the outages. I'm sure the same as Comcast, but customers are calling very, very quickly as well. There are proactive messages that go out to customers, but there is an analysis very quickly of the cut. Was it intentional? Was it accidental? Industrial? Whatever that may be. But yes, we hear from our customers quite loudly. We even get a number of calls. We have a reward tip line that happens to come into our team, to the security team, and we hear from customers with all of their other challenges as well too. But that's a big effort. And again, that takes time away from us servicing our other customers and helping them with their other needs. I'm sure Comcast is in the same boat.
Yeah, I mean, when these things happen, it's not typically a very small, isolated problem. You've got hundreds or thousands of customers offline, so the phones immediately or in chats or app interactions shoot through the roof when these things happen. But our telemetry that we gather on the network, we've got a lot of visibility into these networks, using some of the technology that we have available now, that we can tell exactly where the cut is at when the cut happens. It allows us to get there faster. I'm sure Charter and Cox and others are the same way, so that we can get restoration back to those customers as quickly as possible. It depends on the extent of the damage and where things are at. Aerial is a simpler application for restoration. Underground can be extremely complex and time-consuming, depending on where you've got enough fiber to pull two ends together and join at that location where it got cut. That can be, anywhere from 8 to 10 hours to restore that kind of outage, depending on what's available for you.
All right, we're almost out of time, but perhaps take a couple seconds. What do you want to leave with the audience? What's your last message, the takeaway that you want them to know about what should be done here, and what does it matter to you?
Yeah, for me on the operations side, partnering with our security and government affairs folks, I think this is where the rubber meets the road. The legislation work that's being done with NCTA and other partner groups that allows us to get more consistency around the issue, how it's prosecuted, how it's tracked, how the law is applied more universally is critical. And the more that we can engage this recycling community to create less, I'll call it artificial demand for what these people are going after, is going to help us in the long run to combat this problem.
Jane?
Yeah, I think it's similar to, the term, the war on drugs, right? We're not going to be able to arrest our way out of this problem. When we do see arrests, we do oftentimes see a nice reduction, at least temporarily, in areas. We've seen that recently in Texas, a number of good arrests in Missouri. But for us to really reduce the demand and reduce the opportunities for people to profit from this crime. So we'll continue to beat that drum. Awareness in our reward program and the further support from prosecutors. I think right now for us, from a security perspective, we're going to continue our push with prosecutors and greater awareness.
And Alex, as an association, what should we take away?
I think we'll continue to flag this as an issue and highlight how it impacts everyone, and work with our companies and policymakers and law enforcement to make sure that we've got the whole gamut covered.
And Bill, a closing thought that the message should be to make sure that you're notified, that when you see something, say something. Is there anything more we should know? Like, are you available if we need you tomorrow?
The FYI is always available if you need us tomorrow.
Well, let's give a large clapping and applause to our audience. We'll leave you a couple minutes early. Thank everyone for attendance. Thanks so very much.